All right, Diderot. Actually, it's pronounced Diderot. Sorry, Diderot. Diderot is famous for his rationalism also and for his extreme criticism of Christianity. He said, and I quote him, "Of all the religions there are, Christianity has to be the worst religion in the world. Most absurd, most atrocious in its dogma." But he's also remembered for getting together his encyclopedia. He believed that if we could collect, yeah.
There's no E in his name, but it's D-I-D-E-R.
Have I misspelled it? Let me look it up again. D-I-D-E-R-O-T. Thank you. D-I-D-E-R-O-T. Now again, if you notice these French words, if any of you have any of you taken French by any chance? Yeah, the French words are not spelled the way they're pronounced in the English language, not in the least. So, no, I never took French. I took Spanish. Anyway, Diderot. Anyway, Diderot believed that if we could collect all the knowledge that mankind's accumulated and put it in one place, we'd become much better. So he put together his encyclopedia, and encyclopedias are still used, where you collect all the knowledge that mankind has gotten and get it together in one place. And he believed it would change the general way of thinking. And his encyclopedia did sell. I want to state this about encyclopedias. So, I mean, my dad bought one the year I was born, bought a set of encyclopedias the year I was born, and I would browse through it when I was a kid. Much of the information in that encyclopedia, particularly in fields like medicine, electronics, are now known to be either obsolete or known to be, a lot of what they taught as right is now known to be wrong. So, I mean, again, who's to say which, when you get to a controversial topic, who's to say which view is right, which view is wrong? That's something that mankind simply has not been able to determine. All right, then your book goes on to talk about the science of man. In other words, if matter can respond to scientific laws, will not human behavior also respond to scientific laws? And they believed that they could figure out that they could figure out how humans would behave. And if, in other words, all right, I'll tell you, on a personal note, I enjoy browsing the internet or looking up the names of certain individuals. And I've done a lot of research on men like Jesse James, John Dillinger, Bonnie and Clyde, Babyface Nelson, Pretty Boy Floyd. Any of you ever heard of these persons? What do you know about them? They're all really, really bad people. When I saw my daughter, my oldest daughter one time, looking up John Dillinger, and I said, hey, go ahead. Here's what I said. People have thought that they could study these men and figure out what made them go bad. I said, you might as well give up trying. The best of us can't figure that out. Why did these men go bad? Personally, I think they just simply at some point decided to, and it was their own decision. But a lot of people have said it was the product of their own environment. You know, if they had had a better upbringing, or better this, or better that, but you have cases where you have two identical twins, and one of them becomes a high achiever, and the other one becomes a, you might say, worthless bum. And they lived in the same home, same parents, went to the same school, same teachers, same environment. But they believed that they could shape the environment, change my hand. Now, one of them I happened to miss, and I just realized this, was John Locke, and I certainly can't leave him out. Thomas Jefferson was a student of John Locke's. well, not a real student, but he read John Locke's book. John Locke highly influenced our founding fathers. John Locke believed that at birth, the mind was one big blank and waiting to be written on. And when you're born, you have a blank mind, and the parents, the people around them write on this blank mind, and we are completely at the mercy of our environment. We become what our environment makes us. Again, oops, BL, I'm sorry, BL. Our mind is one big blank slate waiting to be written on. On a personal note, there's not much I've heard that I can agree with less. But again, to each his own. So he believed that people were shaped by their environment. All right, moving on. I didn't realize that skipped him because he doesn't have his name in big red print like the other ones do. Science of man. We can study human behavior and rationalize it and then make persons turn out the way we want them. You can decide for yourself how much of that you believe. Those old original philosophers died off, and new philosophers took their place. Rousseau is famous for his philosophy of the general will. He believed that everybody should figure out, now what is the majority opinion, and let's follow that. Did I spell that name right? R-O-U-S-E-A-U. R-O-U. All right, S-E-A-U. All right. Yeah, we should all follow general will. Now, I have to comment, folk. But that's what a lot of us do. How are most of us dressed? Well, then dress that way. What do most of us believe? Well, let's believe that. Discoveries are made by people who disagree with a norm. The opposite of Rousseau was a man named Thoreau. The names almost rhyme. Thoreau said, to be a man, you must be a nonconformist. Again, have any of you studied these philosophers? Okay, a few of you. But to be a man, he said, you must be a nonconformist. Rousseau said, no, we must make everybody conform to general will. And his is something that's called an oxymoron. If anyone won't conform, he must be forced to be free. Now, folks, if you're free, you're not forced. Or if you're forced, you're not free. How can you be forced to be free? It's like a truthful liar, an honest thief. It's called an oxymoron. But anyway, this is what he taught us. All right, maybe I shouldn't insert my opinions, but every time I come to this, I always do. Forced to be free. Adam Smith. Wrote to Wealth of Nations. He was the first person that we know of to study economics, and he believed that economics was a science that could be figured out. And again, I would like to see him try to figure out the modern day stock market, as if anybody can. But he believed, among other things, that the government should keep its hands off, that we should all be free to pursue our own self-interest. His doctrine is known as the doctrine of laissez-faire, or hands-off. I should have written that in cursive because it's a foreign word. Laissez-faire. Now, this issue is still debated today. When is government interference in the economy necessary? How much freedom do we have to pursue our own dreams, our own goals, our own ambitions? He believed that the less the government interfered, the better society would be, and today you would have a whole lot of, among other things, talk show hosts, conservative talk show people who would agree with him. Laissez-faire. The government should let the people each pursue their own occupation and allow people to pursue their own self-interest. Socialism, by the way, is almost the opposite of laissez-faire. Socialism is where the government should control everything. All the production should be done by the government. The government should then redistribute to everybody equally. That's socialism. Laissez-faire, everybody should be free to build up for himself. Opposites. The book goes on to talk about women, particularly a few women tried to become scientists and joined the scientific guilds of the day. They were not allowed in. Most famous was Mary Wollstonecraft, an English writer who's viewed by many as the father of modern feminism, I mean as a founder of modern feminism, Most of your Enlightenment philosophes were what we might today call sexist. They believed that the men should dominate and the men should be in charge. The book goes on to talk about art. The one thing I want you to get from this section is that it came to be looked on as two types of culture: high culture and low culture. The high culture was generally the culture of the elite, the educated, the highborn. The low culture, the culture of the ordinary. Now, in the United States, we don't have this real differentiation. But in Europe, until recently, your high cultured people liked to listen to such persons as Mozart and Beethoven, and your low culture people would like to strum on a banjo. They would look on our country music as being low culture. I'm not saying it is, but that was the way they would perceive it. And again, Mozart, Shakespeare, they would be the high culture. Low culture, otherwise known as popular culture. High culture and popular culture. And they would look on Elvis Presley as probably being popular culture, and Walt Disney as popular culture. Again, I'm not saying they were, but, and again, we in America do not make those kind of distinctions. All right. About 1750, I don't worry about the dates so much, but that's an approximate time. Europe's population started to grow. Of course, you all know how I'm thinking about why. The Little Ice Age was over, and the climate started warming up. And even though we don't have accurate weather records until beginning around the 1880s, it is believed that the climate warming that began around 1750 and continued until around 1998, when the climate warming seems to have stopped and maybe starting to reverse. But with a warming of the climate, folk, came a big population increase. And as we talked about, it occurred both in China and in Europe. Crops were better. Of course, another thing that helped, about this time, the bubonic plague largely disappeared from Europe. Diet was better, more plentiful food and better transportation. And your book does mention the climate, right here at the bottom, page 518. Many climatologists believe that the Little Ice Age came to an end, and the climate warmed. Now, something else that happened about this time that we'll talk about later. Two things. Number one, Jenner invented the smallpox vaccination. Don't worry about that yet, but I promise to mention later. But the smallpox vaccination saved millions, probably untold millions of lives. I personally was vaccinated for smallpox twice. I mean, if you look at the arms of persons my age, you'll see where they jab you 6 times with a needle and it left a scar. And I don't think they do that more, but everybody around me growing up for about 200 years had these scars on the right here on their arm. Then when I was in the Army many years later, they gave us all another smallpox vaccination, whether we needed it or not. In the Army, felt like in 1980 that we needed to be vaccinated against smallpox. But the smallpox, and also at this time, Louis Pasteur discovered that these germs that we could see under a microscope, the microscope had been invented in 1610, and they had noticed these tiny little creatures roaming around under the microscope. They're so small we couldn't see them. Louis Pasteur told us that these cause disease, and that these creatures, I'm going to call them, whether they call them bacteria, germs, whatever you call them, microbes, protozoa, and their names have changed from time to time, but they could be killed by soap, heat, hand washing, fundamental hygiene, washing of dishes, and this helps curb the spread of disease and guarantee that a higher percentage of people who were born would grow up. All right. Book goes on to talk about capitalism was a big commercial capitalism, again, as opposed to socialism. Capitalism related to laissez-faire, the idea that the government should allow business free rein and should not interfere with business affairs. This was to be seriously challenged later by a view called socialism that we will be talking about later.